Welcome to The Good Life. Thank you for stopping by. I'm Patrick Harney. And before I get into the show, first, I just want to make sure I say that please go on and subscribe, like, share the videos, the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any of it. And thank you to all of you who have already watched, who have given me feedback. I really appreciate every single one of you. And it helps. So thank you. Now, on today's episode, I have an actor who is also a master carpenter. His name's Todd Gurdon, and yeah, I'm really excited to get into a conversation with him and listen to his story, and I'm excited for him to be able to share it with you guys. So let's jump in. All right, Todd.
Good morning.
How we doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Well, first of all, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I did want to talk to you because you are an actor, and I wanted to know, because I don't think we've ever really talked about this, but so how did you get into acting specifically?
It was actually community theater when I was 8 years old. My mom and dad were involved in a theater production called the Ridgedale Players, Pleasant Ridge, Ferndale, and there was a little community playhouse over on 10 Mile. And I was actually in quite a few theater type programs back in those days. I played Smee and Peter Pan. I was one of the little boys in Oklahoma. I was in another production called The Odd Couple. And so my dad was kind of a producer for a lot of those things. And then I kind of went on and did some stuff in high school. And I just kind of loved it my whole entire life, really. I mean, I nowadays have kind of a look that I kind of get put in. So, I mean, but when you're a kid, I mean, it was my passion. So I loved it an awful lot.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of goes into the next question that I have is there any type of role that you gravitate toward? Because I know you said that you have a specific look that may, that people may see you in as one type of role, but is there a type of role that naturally you gravitate toward that may be different than what you play often?
Honestly, I play a lot of dad roles because I'm kind of almost 50 years old, and I'm kind of jolly, and I've got children of my own. So, I mean, when the paper series came along and Tony cast me as Caden's father, that's kind of been a running gag. I've been cast as a father figure in 2 or 3 other productions, some independent stuff. College guys would call me up and say, "Hey, I've got a role for you. You look great for a dad. Will you be this guy's father," or what have you? And so, but I really like to, I'd like to gravitate more towards like a serious role, like a more lead type of scenario, to where I'm more of a centralized attention as opposed to kind of maybe supporting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. And, and I think too, I mean, for one, there's nothing, I'm glad that there are dad roles out there,
Yeah,
because,
me too. Absolutely right.
because then it gives an example, or it gives the opportunity to be able to set a good, if the script allows, to be able to set a good example of, what a good father looks like. And I feel like we could use a lot of that, and, nowadays.
I absolutely agree. I had a great dad. My mom and dad divorced actually when I was very young, and I didn't get a lot of chance to spend time with him when I was a kid. But at the time I was 15 years old, I opted to move in with him and kind of really figure out who my dad was and what he was all about. He married again and actually adopted her 2 children and raised her 2 kids. So there was 5 children in our family, and my dad was always just a powerhouse. He just worked and worked, but he, regardless of the fact that however busy he was, when we were there, he was focused on letting us know that he loved us and he cared. And, regardless of the fact that whatever happened between your mother and I'm your father, and I will always be here for you. And, I moved him home from California about 10 years ago back to Michigan. And he ended up, of course, he died a couple of years ago, but the last 5 or 7 years with my dad, and he, being an actor and wanting to be involved in as much acting as he was just like, "Oh, man, I can't believe you're doing all this stuff, son. It's incredible." And so inside of me, I felt very proud that my dad saw me moving forward in a direction that he wasn't able to move on to in his acting career. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty neat.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with my father. Is he's always been very, very. It always blows me away because I never understand how, like, in no matter what situation I find myself in or what issue or anything I ever find myself in, he always knows exactly what to say. You know what I mean?
Pretty
And so
uncanny, yeah.
and so that's what I hope that I can be at some point, when I have kids, is that no matter what, I'll somehow be able to have the answer, or an answer that may lend to to growth for my kids. But yeah, and in terms of the jolly thing, I mean, you are a pretty jolly fella,
I didn't get
and so hey, who knows? You could be the next Santa Claus in a massive like studio production. You never know.
It's true, but I've got sleeve tattoos, and I've also been cast as a gangster, and I've killed a bunch of people, and I've been an axe murderer, and so it's like,
In films.
yes, in
Correction, in
films,
films.
absolutely, yeah. So I've ran the gamut. In all honesty, I've been, geez, I've played so many different types already, and I mean, some people see me. I'm kind of intimidating, I suppose. I mean, I
Yeah.
was a professional bouncer for a long time, and armed security, and I ran the Fillmore Detroit security for a long time, and I have a presence just because I kind of know how to directionalize 15,000 people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you have to be able to stand there and be someone of merit, and you have to captivate your audience. You know what I'm saying? And no matter where you are in the world, in my opinion, out of all my years working in clubs, they always put me right in the front because I can watch, and everyone knows that I'm standing there because I'm going to let them know I'm standing there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and even even at like the rap party for Good Thief, when you, myself, and Jimmy were talking, just because, I mean, that was the first time that I had really been able to have like a good conversation with you. I mean, I think we had met once before, but just briefly, like in passing.
right.
But yeah, and to be able to just have a conversation with you, and I remember it was interesting because that was something that I noticed was, and Jimmy has the same thing, is both of you have a certain confidence in the way that you carry yourselves, that it's one of those things where it's like, no matter what, the attention starts to get drawn toward wherever you guys are, if that makes sense. Whatever
No,
you're
it,
doing.
it does. It does. My wife says the same thing to me. She's like, "Man, Todd, you can walk into a room of people and everyone kind of turns around like, who's that guy?" And I
Yeah.
don't try to, but like I stand up tall and I make eye contact with everybody, and I
Yeah.
introduce myself. Hey, I'm Todd Gurdon. Hey, how are you? I'm Todd Gurdon. And that's not really a characteristic that a lot of people, I think, in the world are comfortable with having. I mean,
Especially nowadays.
right, right. And I have no fear inside of me. I hit a point in time in my life, I don't know, probably about 15 years ago, where fear left me. And I can
Mm.
walk out my front door in my house, and I'm never looking over my shoulder. And you can put me in the darkest space or the lightest space with millions of people, and I'm exactly who I am, like every single time. So,
Well, and that's I'll tell you what, that's definitely something that I feel like a lot of people strive for and don't really ever achieve. So that's, to be able to have done that, what you said about 15 years ago,
yeah.
and so that would have been what, your mid 30s, to be able to
uh,
achieve that.
I was probably just about 32 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, to be able to achieve that in your early 30s, man, that's a gift.
I had to. I really didn't have any choice. I mean, I was working. I was running down a bad road when I was younger, and I was very rambunctious, and my mind is big, so I put myself in unfortunate spots on occasion, and because I'm kind of a thrill seeker, and I want to be there, and then finally I hit the point where I was just like, man, there's really nothing in the world that I haven't like come across that like kind of sets me in my heels any longer. So I mean, I love acting because of that, because I've been told by quite a few producers and directors that, you know, you're not afraid to be in front of a camera. And I'm not. I mean, me talking to you is me talking to the guy across the street. You can put, $50,000 worth of camera equipment sitting in my face, and I'm not really worried about it. So I mean,
Yeah. Well, and that's one of those things that, again, it kind of lends to, I think, the confidence in yourself, um, to be able to do that. Because, like, for me, I'm with a camera. That's where I'm most comfortable,
Sure.
is in front of a camera, and or on a set. Now, when I was doing stage, I was like a nervous wreck before every single show. I'd get on the stage, we'd start the show, and I'd be fine, and I would feel great.
Right.
But it was always those moments before that was just like so nauseating. I mean, I wouldn't be able to eat all day
Oh,
because
wow.
I wouldn't be able to hold it down. Like
Yes.
I would just be a bundle of nerves. But um, but it is one of those things where, uh, the older, at least that I've found, the older I've gotten, the more comfortable I'm beginning to feel in myself, and the more comfortable I find myself in situations that aren't your normal situation. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Absolutely.
Um,
I
so yeah,
find you to
man,
be very confident, Patrick. Really, I mean, whenever I see you, you also have that air about you. I mean, you're younger. You're what? You're 20, 28 years old, I think you said. Or,
25.
okay, so you're still kind of in the beginning stages of manhood. I mean, men don't
Mhm.
become men until we're probably in our 30s, in my opinion. We're just wandering
Yeah,
around in the world, searching, I guess. You know what I'm
aimlessly.
saying? I mean, yeah, kind of, sort of. I mean, I moved across the country 5 times. I mean, before I was 30 years old, and I always came back to Detroit, and I never kind of knew like what I wanted to do. And then I said, something. It's funny. I wanted to act when I was younger, and when I was living with my father, I submitted photographs to the I group probably over 20 years ago, and
Mm,
that was when the I group was very. I'm with them now, and it's great. I have a wonderful relationship with them, but they weren't looking for a 20-year-old kid. You know what I'm saying? Because I
yeah,
just didn't have my mind about me, and they couldn't place me someplace. So,
yeah.
and in this world we live in, it's all about placement.
Very much so. Very much so. And I think what's, with everything that's going on right now in terms of, COVID and everything, I, that is one thing that I do miss, and I hope we get back to, is to go to your point from earlier, is being able to come into a room and say, hi, I'm so and so, hi, I'm so and so, shake
Yes.
everyone's hand, look everybody
Yes.
in the eye. I mean, just going to the grocery store, I go to the grocery store, and if I'm like walking by someone, or if I see that, if they're standing on one side of the aisle looking at the other, looking at their options, whatever, and I go in front of them, I always try to say, excuse me. Well, it's almost like, people feel like they have a muzzle on, and you walk in front of them, I say, oh, excuse me, or pardon me, and they just look at you, and they
Or
don't
they'll
say a
drop their
word.
eyes and just going to keep on walking in the other direction.
Yeah, it's very strange, and it's kind of sad. I'm hoping that will change, and that some people will start to loosen up a little bit in terms of their anxiousness and their fear, because that's another thing that that really, I think, has driven a lot of this, is fear. And I just hope that some of that can start to subside, as time goes on, because fear. I mean, fear can kill you just the same as any disease can. So,
Absolutely. The
um,
unknown is something that people don't. It's fear itself is bad enough. On top of the fact that I'm afraid, and now I have to go out into a room full of people who are also afraid.
yeah,
And singularized fear can be tolerated because you can kind of go outside and float your way through the world. And now we have everyone who just no one knows.
yeah,
Is it that guy? Is it this guy? What's going to happen if I even just like elbow bump this dude? And now, I mean, this is a very realistic scenario, and I feel terrible in the beginning stages of the COVID pandemic. I had a little bit of an attitude because I'm a strong-willed individual, and I was like,
hmm,
listen, man, I don't really understand what this is all about. And now I have 5 friends of mine who have lost both of their parents now,
mm,
and I have lost personally at least 6 friends that I've known for almost my whole entire life. And one very close friend of mine just died about a month ago, and I'd known Bobby since kindergarten. And he was a strong, virile man. He got sick, and within 3 months he was passed on. So
jeez,
it's very realistic.
sorry to hear that,
I
man.
mean, yeah,
Yeah,
it's terrible, but I still can't let myself get in my mind and say, I'm afraid of this, you know? I mean,
well, and one thing that really kind of bothered me during this whole thing is the lack of pushing for healthy diets and exercise.
absolutely.
Because, I mean, if you do those two things, it's not easy by any means, but if you do those two things, just like COVID aside, you what you're doing is you're setting your body up to be able to fight off anything that comes your way.
100%.
Um, and you also set yourself up for later in your life to have to be able to handle again more that comes your way, and and also to be able to stay mobile and be able to stay mentally you know mentally healthy. And again, I'm not saying that this hasn't been a problem, because it obviously has, but I never heard anybody say go for a run, or
Right.
work out,
Yes.
eat healthy, get your
Stay
vegetables, get your
inside and
fruit.
stay away from everybody. That's what it's
And
not healthy.
so what happens with that is the first thing that goes is this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is your mind. You start to go crazy, you start to go stir crazy.
Mhm.
And then your body starts to fatigue. I mean, it only takes 3 days for your body to start getting out of shape.
Yeah.
3 days, that's it. But yet it takes like 3 times that, or 3 weeks or whatever, to get your body in shape. It takes
Right.
more work to get in shape than out of shape. But it's when so much fear is pumped into people, it becomes crippling. And
Yes.
and to your point, it's one of those things where you have to have a healthy respect for it, but don't let it control you, if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense, for sure. And to add on to you, I've had I worked out a lot when I was younger, and now I'm a full-time master carpenter. I build houses 6 days a week typically, and I'm a very strong man. At 47 years old, I can pretty much outwork any 20-year-old kid you put in front of me. And
Hmm.
I still do 100 push-ups every single morning before I leave the house. And I take my multis and I take my zincs, and that's just, I've never been, I get sick maybe once a year, just because I know that I haven't eaten fast food in 15 years. None of it. I've eaten no
Good for
Taco
you.
Bell, no McDonald's, no Wendy's, Burger King, nothing. I mean,
You're not missing much.
no, it's pretty much all the same stuff, I guess. But I enjoy going to a restaurant, but I'm very selective about the restaurants that I go to eat clean food. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, what you put in is what you're going to get out.
Yep.
And anything, I mean, even to kind of sidetrack, going back into acting, if you think that you can live on a McDonald's diet as an actor in your mind, then you're going to be a McDonald's actor. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people like to eat McDonald's, and I guess it's okay that you have a little fast food every now and again, but you can't, I, in The Good Thief, for instance, because I'm so busy, I unfortunately flubbed my very first interview with Lance, and I felt terrible about it.
Mm.
And he kind of looked at me, he's like, hey, Todd, we're filming your spot tomorrow. And I came home, and my wife said, how'd it go? And I'm like, man, I bombed, like bad. And she's like, and like, you bombed, like you're out of the movie? I said, no, I'm still in the movie, but I'm going to go down in the basement and rehearse my lines until 5 o'clock in the morning and become this guy, because I haven't yet. And, I'm typically very good about embodying the project, because it's really important. I mean, if you look at the Grammys and the Emmys, there's 400 people in that room. There's not 17,000 people in that room.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And all those people are not McDonald's actors. They live it. They breathe it. It's
the cream of the crop.
Yes. And, my acting coach, David Thompson, who's a wonderful person, he said, acting is my breath and it's my life. And without acting, I'm just a man walking through the world. And that kind of struck me, I suppose, a little bit. And it made me think to myself, well, do I want to be an armchair actor? Do I want to be a fast food actor? Or do I want to be like a filet mignon actor?
Yeah.
I mean, I not to wage it up, but I mean, that's kind of the way it goes, so.
No, yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's so the acting studio that I'm working with right now, or that I'm studying with, it's Ivana Chubik.
I'm
She
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's out in her studio's out in California, it's out in LA, but they've been doing online classes, and I mean the level of talent that she herself has worked with. I mean, she helped launch Jake Gyllenhaal's career, Brad Pitt's career, Halle Berry, Beyonce. I mean, the list goes on. Sylvester Stallone. I mean, she's worked with everybody. And so I'm taking a class in her studio with Chris Holder, and I found that her technique, because I mean, I grew up in sports, and it's always, for me growing up, it's always one of those things where, okay, if I see something that I want to get to, if I have an objective, then I know that I need to do XYZ to get there, right?
Right.
Well, with acting, it's not like that. Everybody's path is
Oh,
different,
for
and
sure.
that's it has been troubling for me, because I'm like, no, like I want there's got to be one, there's got to be something that I can do,
Sure.
that works, right?
Right.
um and what's great about this technique is for each character, she kind of helps give you a playbook for your character and for each
Well, that's
scene.
great.
And so that's what I've been trying to use. And so it's always one of those things where, like, so I took Chris Newman's class, um, with Rich Guterres studio, and that gave me the tools for the audition,
Right.
right? Well, now taking this class, this gives me the tools once I book the job, you
Yeah.
know?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Um, and
You're
so,
motivating me to want to go get back into classes, man. This
oh,
is
dude, you
awesome.
should, man, you
I
should.
absolutely need to, for sure.
And one thing that my cousin had told me, he's been acting for decades and decades. He said, he goes, if you're not working, you should be studying.
Yeah.
If you're not studying, that means you're working.
Right.
And that
Absolutely.
could be anything. I mean, for me, like, I consider studying just even watching YouTube videos with interviews of some of my favorite actors, or some of the best actors, of how their process works
Right.
and like what they do. And or watching movies, but not watching them just to enjoy it, but watching them to really study the performance.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, all of it is it goes toward the career, and it helps build the career. It's all stepping stones. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. When my first time that I was ever like actually in a movie, I suppose it was called After the Blood Rush, and I played a victim for a vampire killing in Hamtramck. And the only reason I got the gig is because I built the set for them, and their lead role failed on them, and they didn't have a victim, and so they wanted me to come and show up. And I remember very specifically the cameraman said, "Wow, we got a little method actor over here," And I was 31 years old or whatever. I had no idea what method acting was. And so I looked it up, and it really became like one of those, well, man, if you're not going to turn into the person that's being filmed, then I'm just Todd Gurdon acting like somebody,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be Todd Gurdon acting like somebody. I wanted to be Daddy St. Louis. I wanted to be, Carson's father. I wanted to be Caden's dad, and Todd McCoy. And even though I am who I am, I had to think, well, what is this guy's life all about? What did this guy endure? Not what did Todd endure, And it becomes the line when you step over from saying, oh yes, I want to be an actor, to I'm turning into this person. Look at Christian Bale, the guy who lost 75, 80 pounds, 100 pounds for jobs. And
Yeah.
um, what's Val Kilmer, who basically lost his mind playing Doc Holliday. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
these method actors who really turn into those people, and
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and I think the whole method acting thing, I think it gets a bad rep, but people don't understand what real, like, method acting is, because people look at people like Shia LaBeouf, and think, oh, well, he's a method actor because he pulled his tooth for fury and he cut his face and kept opening his wound and blah blah blah. Like,
Sure,
no.
sure.
That's not method acting.
Right.
That's like that's just a little far. You know what I mean?
I agree.
But to your point, you know, you look at the character and you go, okay, what has this guy been through? Not necessarily me, but what has this guy been through?
Right.
And then you look at it and you go, okay, so he's been through XYZ. Now, from what experiences have I had? Can I take that and inform this character to give him the breadth from his experiences? Because
Right.
I mean, really, you can't just like manufacture, say for example, your when you're young, if your character's mother killed his father,
Right.
if unless that happened to you, you can't just manufacture that. But what you can do is you can look at that and go, okay, well, I had a deep loss from my father, and I felt at that point abandoned by my mother.
Sure.
Okay, well, when in my life have I had a really hard loss that seemed unfair?
Mm-hmm.
And it could be anything. Okay. Well, it was a good friend of mine years ago. Okay. Well, then when did I feel ever abandoned? Okay. Well, maybe I was in a relationship that went sideways and she just left me.
Sure.
You know, and so
Right.
you can take those things and take those feelings and add them together and then just tweak it to fit that character.
Yeah.
That's the whole part of it. You know, it's
Yeah.
not cutting your face open and pulling a perfectly good tooth just to
Right.
have a look
Right.
for a few months, you know.
There are extremes.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not saying he's not a great actor because Shia LaBeouf is a fantastic actor, but
No, he's one of the best for sure.
so you talked about carpentry, you're a master
Yes.
carpenter.
Yes.
So how did you get into that? What drew you to that? Because I know it is creativity, it's creative in the way that you work, but it is still, you know, pretty different.
It was a fluke. It was an absolute fluke, and I got picked up hitchhiking when I was living in Aspen in 1994. I moved to Colorado when I was 19 years old because I needed to get away from Michigan. I needed to get away from my family and just become a man somewhere. So I jumped in the car with my buddy in a Volkswagen and his girlfriend, and we drove to Colorado. And I lived in Aspen for 3 years. And I had $1,000 when I left, and I had $200 after we got into a place, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I was a morning cook at a place called Benjamin's Deli in Aspen, and I hated it, and it was just ridiculous. So I walked out of my job. I lived probably 20 miles away, and so I was like, well, I got nothing else better to do all day long, and it's a beautiful hike. I'll just walk home. So I'm walking down Highway 82, and this enormous dually truck, because living in Colorado in the 90s, I mean, hitchhiking was like no big deal. You just got in the car and they drove you where you're going to go. It was not dangerous. I mean, people would give you beer. It was really kind of funny. And I mean, you know, that valley was a trip in the 90s, but I'll tell you all about that later. So I get picked up by Bob Neininger in his enormous dually truck, and he says not one word to me. The whole time he's like, boy, you live in Woody Creek? I'm like, yeah. So he drives me to Woody Creek, and we get just about to my house. He's like, well, I guess you're out of work. I'm like, what? Yeah, how'd you guess, guy? You know, it's noon and I'm hitchhiking, you know, sure, I'm out of work. And then so he drops me off at my house. He's like, so I'll see you tomorrow morning at 6:30. I'm like, for what? He's like, well, I own a construction company. I need a strong young guy, and you need a job. And I said, I don't have any tools or anything. I got tools and boots for you. I'll see you. And he was there at 6:28 in my driveway, and I walked out. I know this guy, and he worked me, and I learned how to do concrete forming and pour concrete, and he taught me how to do it. And then so when I came home, my brother and I ran a gutter company, and we would do concrete pours on the side because I had the knowledge, and then that kind of parlayed into windows and siding, which parlayed into me working directly with a guy by the name of Howard Jones, who was the first master that I ever worked underneath. And Howard showed me how to build a staircase. And I never really liked being a carpenter, to tell you the truth. I had very good hands, is what they said, because using tools is a very important part of being a carpenter and knowing how to pound the nail. I mean, anyone can pound nails, but if you're efficient at it, then that's how you're going to make some money. And then I left there and I was like, you know what? I want to branch out a little bit. So I wired houses for 4 years with a buddy of mine that I used to skateboard with in high school. And then I roped houses in all the Crosswinds communities. And that was kind of a fun job, but it was cold. And I didn't really like being an electrician. And I was never really good at that type of math.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went back to building and I did commercial interiors and hung drywall and steel studs. And then I got hooked up with the master carpenter that I still work with now for 26 and a half years, John Carter, who's, yeah, he's Yoda. I'm Obi-Wan and he's Yoda.
Okay.
He used to be Obi-Wan and I was the Padawan, but now he's anyway, so, and John is also one of my best friends in the whole wide world, and he's retired, but he taught me table saw 101, and he taught me, this is how you do it. And we're going to build cabinetry, and I'm going to show you how to build a house. And I want you to come back to work for me. And I want you to learn this trade. And he fired me 3 times because I was an idiot and I had a bad attitude when I was younger. But like, again, we're partners now. So, I mean, yeah. And so cool. I built the house that I'm living in right now for my family. My wife and I bought a little bungalow house here in Royal Oak, and I ripped the top end of it off and while we had 2 kids on the ground and built an addition. And so, yeah, wow. it's been a life's journey that I always kind of go back to construction work. And now I've been doing it literally full time for over 26 years now. And I'm very good.
Man. Well, and that's cool that you had somebody who was willing to teach you, you know, from square one all the way through to where you are now. You know, because I mean, I think everybody gets so wrapped up in their own stuff that I mean, I don't know of too many people that are willing to take the time and invest in someone else like that.
John's a wonderful person. I owe him exclusively. I mean, and you know, at this point in time, not to interrupt you, but you know, he relies on me. Like he's like probably top 2 of my best friends. He's like a 65-year-old man, and I've built 4 houses from the ground up with him, and he helped me build my house. And you know, we do $75,000 kitchens and $50,000 bathrooms, and he's an expert tile guy, and I'm the guy who knows the tools. So we're very symbiotic, and I suppose if you're going to be in a relationship with a carpenter and understand, because there's a lot that goes along with like just building a house. I mean, I'm in the middle of doing the bid right now, as a matter of fact, and it's already 5 pages deep, and I haven't even gotten to like how I'm going to finish it off yet, you know. And so it's,
jeez,
yeah, it goes on and on. And you know, I'm a professional percussionist too, so like my wife I'm never home. I'm off playing a gig or building a house or this and the other thing. And the second I walk in the door, like my kids are my focus, and I kind of try to not work so much when I'm around them. And I don't, you know, she always asks me like, what are you doing with this acting career? I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm making it. That's what I'm doing with it. You know, it hurts to be a carpenter. I'm getting beat up and tired. I want to go on to the next thing, you know? So, I mean,
yeah. Well, that's good, man. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
I had seen this video on YouTube where, oh my gosh, I don't remember the term of it, but they make barrels for whiskey.
Coopering.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it was a cooperage that they went to.
Yeah.
And it was so cool to watch them do it. Because they go, you know, we don't use really any machines. We do everything pretty much by hand, with the exception of, you know, final touch stuff for the barrels. But it was so cool to see them do that, because I'm a big whiskey fan, and I know you are.
I am.
And I'll have to try to find the video and send you the link. I think you'd like it.
I know exactly which video you're talking about. And,
oh, you do? Okay.
I do, absolutely.
That's awesome.
And it was a guy who actually had a construction company, and he liked to drink whiskey, and he started making whiskey barrels. And
yes, exactly.
Yeah, big fella. Yep.
Yep.
His wife she's like, you're gonna do what? He's like, I'm gonna start making whiskey barrels. And Yeah.
Yeah. And then they went in on it together, and she started helping with the business. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. It was cool. But that's what made me think of it, was when you were saying, because I do know that you're a big whiskey guy, and you're talking
Yeah.
about construction. So yeah, that's funny. Well, one thing I always like to do also is I always like to try and talk about some sort of good news that's out there right now. And I don't
Good.
know if you heard, but I mean, obviously, I imagine you've heard everything that's been going on with Wall Street and like GameStop and stuff,
I have.
all this stocks and stuff. Well, I just read an article that this 20-year-old kid in Minnesota, his name is Hunter Khan, I think was his name. He's a college kid. He made $30,000 in 1 week off of his GameStop stock.
Wow.
And with that, he went to GameStop and he bought a bunch of games, Nintendo Switches, Xboxes, PlayStations, everything, and then
Yeah.
took them to the children's hospital
Oh, fantastic.
that was close, and just gave the kids $30,000 worth of gaming stuff and stuff for them to be able to play.
That's wonderful. Philanthropy is a wonderful thing, man. If you got it like that, and you can do something like that. Give it up, because there's people who need stuff like that. People who need, the world needs people like that.
And he's only 20 years old.
Bright boy. He's got a wonderful future ahead of him, I'd say.
Man, I couldn't tell you. I don't know how many 20-year-olds that I know. I mean, I don't know really that many 20-year-olds, but at least a bunch of my friends or whatever, when I was 20, and everybody that I knew when we were 20, I don't know if anybody would have done that. They might have been like, yeah, I'll maybe give some money here and there, but like 30,000, I'd be like, oh yeah, this will buy me a new car or whatever.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, props to Hunter.
That's wonderful.
So how does positivity play a role in your life?
It's funny you should say that, because I struggled for a very long time when I was young with a very negative lifestyle, and my mother and I are not famous friends. She was extremely hard on me when I was a younger kid. After my dad left, I'm kind of reincarnation of my father, and she did not like my dad, and
Mm.
I wanted to be around my dad, and that was the deterrent in her life to show me, I suppose, the support that I was looking for as a little 10-year-old, 11-year-old boy. I messed up, and I did a bunch of really stupid stuff when I was a kid. But I mean, who really doesn't? But I got to the point where I couldn't carry anger around with me anymore, because I was a very, very angry young man. And I oddly enough, I found the Grateful Dead in my mid-20s, and I started to realize that there's kindness in the world, and there's people who are willing to give to you just because you are, and not because I'm Todd, or not because you're Patrick, just because, but I'm a human, and I'm standing here, and that person saw me and said, "Hey, man, are you okay?" And
Mhm.
I wanted to be able to facilitate that to somebody, and I try to live, hopefully most of my life. I mean, everyone needs a boot in their ass every now and again. Like, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
mean, but if you can't deliver that boot without a hug that comes behind it, then you got problems on your hands,
Yeah.
because there's people who want to punch, and you're allowed to punch people, but once you knock them down, you better get them up and buy them a beer and ask them what the problem was, because then that could be your most solid ally for the rest of your life. I mean,
Yeah.
and even though the guy who cut me off down the road, and I'm like, "You guys," and I yelled and screamed, like 30 seconds later, I'm like, "Man, I wonder if he's having a terrible day."
Mm.
You never know. And if I personally feel, for me, that I have to find a reason in a, I suppose, kind of crazy negative world that we live in on occasion, to be all right, because every single person is every single person. You're not, no one is the same. Even twins aren't the same.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
if I don't mean to prattle on, but I mean, if you can't get through a day without just at least being kind for no reason, then you're going to be miserable. And and people who are miserable don't live a very long and happy life, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, what's the saying? Gratitude reciprocates.
Yes.
you know, I think it's always good to try to find some moment in a day to be able to show kindness to somebody, and that could be as small or as big of a, you know, of an act as you would like it to be,
Right.
um but you don't know the impact that it has on that person,
Right.
you know, because just for you, I mean, taking for example, just walking in the grocery store, making eye contact with somebody and waving,
Right.
for them, you know, for you, it's just like, okay, I just looked at somebody and I waved. But for them, they could be like, you know, they could be somebody who feels like nobody notices them. And so that some random stranger noticed them,
Right. Yep.
you know, that's, I mean, that means the world. And so,
Energy, man, it's all energy.
yeah, yeah. And it's very important, I think, to, especially when things get extra negative, to really make an effort to try and, uh, you know, go against that with positivity.
I agree.
Well, that's great, man. Um, okay. Well, before I wrap every show, I always like to do a little segment called the goods. And so these are just questions that, just kind of want to pick your brain, and, I'm just curious on. So let's get to it. Question 1. What is your go-to drink of choice? Specifically, not just, you know.
Founders All Day IPA.
Really?
Oh yes. Well, that and Liberator Gin, Valentine's Liberator Gin is, and I like to drink Reed's extra spicy ginger beer too. So Valentine's, I mean, I can go get the bottle. I'm looking at it right there. but yes, my I suppose the Budweiser of my house used to be Sierra Nevada for a really long time because I'm an IPA hophead. But
Okay.
I found this Founders All Day IPA in a can, and it's just like, oh, really, I love it.
Nice,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
I like, was it, I think Bell's puts it out, Hop Slam.
that's good.
I love
A little,
it.
little too much for me. I mean, it's a
I
little.
mean, it'll get you going. That's for sure.
It's the truth.
It's heavy, but it's good though. I
Yeah,
like it.
it's the truth. Yeah. So also, Valentine's Mayor Pinigrew bourbon and rye whiskey are just fan freaking tastic with just a little bit of ice.
Mm,
Valentine's Distillery in Ferndale, I'll pump those guys because they do small batch and they number their bottles, and it's just it's the purest whiskey I've literally ever had my whole entire life.
really?
Yes, Valentine's. Look it up.
Valentine's. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Valentine's Mayor Pinigrew, and they make a bourbon and they make a rye whiskey, and it's out of control, man. And
Have you ever
so,
had Wild Turkey Long Branch?
I've had regular Wild Turkey, but not Long Branch. And I give it Wild Turkey has a very old history. I mean, that's like one of the original whiskeys out there in the world. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
They have, because their bourbon, Long Branch, that's the first bottle. So Matthew McConaughey became like an ambassador, like a creative ambassador for them,
Yeah.
some years ago.
This commercial is
And
great.
yeah, and that's the first bottle that they have someone else's signature on other than their founders.
Wow.
And so, but dude, that you got to try that.
I'll pick up a bottle.
It's really good. And it's only, I mean, it's only like $40 for a bottle. So it's not outrageous.
It's pretty expensive.
So yeah, but dude, it's really good. Very, very good.
I've got like 5 bottles of bourbon in my house right now. So
trying to get through those.
I got to get through those before I go start buying more, because my wife's gonna think I got a problem. I mean, you never know. I mean, she might already think I have a problem. I'm a very responsible drinker, though. I might say I love to drink all day IPAs, but I'm a 2 beer a day kind of guy, or like I like to drink a big cocktail when I come home, and then maybe a beer. I don't particularly like being drunk, to tell you the truth. It's not my favorite thing in the world. And it's just, I like the way the stuff tastes.
Yeah.
And you know, my brother's business partner, Joe, is a huge bourbon head. And whenever I go over to Aaron's shop, he's probably got 17 or 18 bottles of different kind of bourbons and whiskeys over there. And we'll just drink like little itty bitty, you know, and just taste it. And
yeah.
There's so many varied degrees of bourbons, man. I mean, it's just, it's an interesting story, and it's an interesting line to walk down if you really get into it, you know. I mean, so
Yeah.
and I know you do. So
Yeah.
add Valentine's to your list.
Yes. Yes. I'm gonna have to try that.
Yeah, you love it.
So who would you say is your favorite actor of all time?
Oh my God, you're gonna laugh, and if my brother sees this, he's gonna fall over dead because it's my man crush. I'm a huge fan of Brad Pitt. I have to say
He's a great
that,
actor.
dude, the guy.
I like how
He,
you preface that with my man crush.
well, he kind of is like, you know, I mean, I will watch Legends of the Fall by myself in the daytime. You know what I'm saying? Just because, like, I sit there and I'm just like, man, how does that guy just draw so much just raw energy? And people think that Brad Pitt's just Brad Pitt. I mean, he's just not.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he did one movie. I don't even remember what it was called, like back in the day, and he bombed it. It was terrible, and he was a younger guy, but he was a cute younger guy, you know. And then I remember starting California. I looked just like Brad Pitt looked like in the movie California when I was in my 20s, and some girl rolled up next to me and literally thought that I was Brad Pitt, and she started screaming out, "Oh, hey, it's Brad Pitt!" And she's like pointing out the window, and I'm like all waving, you know, and all these, it was really kind of funny. So, and he just draws the attention, man.
He does.
He's had some bombers out there, you know. I mean, Burn After Reading or whatever. Yeah,
that's a great movie, though. I love
is,
that
but it's
movie.
terrible. His character is absolutely hilarious.
Yes, yes. I thought that was
just making me laugh just thinking about it, because he's just all the things, you know. I mean,
like the gym owner.
Oh yeah, dude, it's just funny. So I like Brad Pitt an awful lot. I do.
I really like the Ocean's movies.
I'm a huge fan. I wish somebody would come around and make something like that. I mean,
yeah,
a new Brat Pack or a new Rat Pack needs to happen.
Yes.
I think. I mean,
dude, I've been saying the same thing, man. Yes.
There needs to be a collective. I mean, I think here in Michigan we've got at least 7 or 8 men. Not to say that women can't. Women should have their own Brat Pack too, because I mean, there's 7 or 8 women actors here in Michigan that just like they murder it.
Yeah, yeah. That are killers. Yeah.
It'd be great to like have the Ali Shee, you know, whole Breakfast Club scenario again, to where you can see the same 7 actors in 13 different movies, and those actors have the ability to change for the movies, you know, and they're not, because if you, I think really what makes a solid actor is, even though you see that guy's face, he's nothing like he was in the last movie, you know. And I'm going to pigeonhole Robert De Niro because I love the guy, but Robert De Niro is Robert De Niro in every single movie he's in.
Yeah.
And nothing but mad respect for that guy. And if he ever sees this, I love you, but you got to change it up a little bit, brother. I know you're getting old now, but I mean, Robert De Niro he's Robert De Niro.
You know what's crazy about that though is like some people can do that and make it work. Like he's one of those guys that can do that, and that Robert De Niro is just so good.
Yes.
Like that's what you want to see whenever you see him in movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're probably right. It'd be a little bit weird if Robert De Niro wasn't Robert De Niro in a movie.
Exactly. like imagine him playing in some fantasy movie.
No.
As an elf, and he's just like you know, with pointy ears and and his mole sticking out of his face.
Right.
That would be really strange.
And then he goes and beats up all the other elves, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Or like Mark Wahlberg. You know, he's tried to vary, you know, his roles, but really at the end of the day, he's just Mark Wahlberg. But he's so good that it's like, you know what? I'm into it. I'm here for it. So
he's big, man. Mark Wahlberg's a big one.
Yeah.
To come from like boy band teeny bopper stuff and running around with his muscles to like
getting arrested all the time.
Yeah, dude, he was a bad kid. And now he's full blown A-lister, philanthropist. He absolutely supports Detroit and the scene in Michigan. And you know,
he's like the definition of turning over a new leaf, right?
Absolutely, for sure.
I mean, the poster child for it.
Yeah.
So if you could place yourself in any film in history,
oh wow,
what would it be? just to be in the cast.
I'm going to dork out and say the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Oh, dude. Nice. Nice.
I
That's a
absolutely
great
will.
choice.
Yeah. I mean, I read The Hobbit when I was younger, and I have the cartoons and I have all of it, you know. And my wife's like, "Oh my God, are you gonna watch that again?" I've probably seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy like 30 times, and I watch them in succession, boom, 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 because I study it because it's important acting, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
those people had to like turn into like medieval like center of the earth. Like those human beings don't exist. You know, like
Yeah.
how do you turn yourself into an elf? How do you turn yourself into? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean,
How do you turn yourself into a dwarf? And
look at Gimli. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got to be a dwarf, and like he was, you know, and it was and Gollum and the whole
oh
nine yards.
man.
I mean, that guy is insanely talented. You
Well,
know,
and especially being able to do all of that to mostly green screen.
yes. Anything to
That's the
green screen. If you can
that's
be
the
an
other
actor
difficult
and
thing.
act in front of green screen and like be good at it,
Yeah.
you'll just sit there and they'll just write you checks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Check after check after check. And
I mean, really.
actually, just so you know, and by the time this episode comes out, I don't know if it'll still be there, but at Celebration Cinema in Lansing, they are showing The Fellowship of the Ring right now on the big screen.
Really, that'd be
Yes.
interesting. I've never seen it in the theaters ever.
No?
No.
Oh, dude, I got to see them all when I was a kid at the theater because my mom's a big Tolkien fan.
Sure.
And I remember when those movies came out, yeah, her and my dad, they took me to see all of them. I mean, I was Legolas for Halloween one year. You know,
Fantastic.
I had all of the figurines, and like I
Yeah.
was super big into Lord of the Rings when I was little.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and at that time wasn't even 10 years old yet.
Yeah.
You know, so those were some of my first movie going experiences, and to have movies like that be some of your first experiences in the theater,
Right.
like that's what set me up for life, man, in terms
Yeah.
of the appreciation for it.
It was that and Harry Potter for me because you know, when I was in my 20s, I read all the Harry Potter books because I
Hmm.
was going through an enormous transition from being an idiot derelict kid to like having this apartment where I didn't really have a lot of friends. And so I would just sit down. I read all the Harry Potter books and I would go to bed at night and I would just dream of an owl showing up to my window. You know what I'm saying? It's like, let me go be a part of that for a little while. I love the mysticism of how humans can find a way to pluck themselves out of this concrete and put themselves back in the woods where we all came from, you know? And
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
For me, if I were to put myself in any of those of any movies, I would say either the Ocean's movies, because that crew would have been so fun to
For
be
sure.
with and be a part of, or Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, wow. Super intense, man.
Very intense. And to be able to, you
That movie
know,
made me cry like 4 times.
oh yeah, and what's really cool about that movie is they really showed like the brotherhood that was really there, you know.
Right.
Because to me, like World War II is such an interesting and intriguing era to
Mm-hmm.
me, because back then I feel like that was when like there was such a sense of pride in fighting for your country,
Yeah.
and everybody gang together and, you know, and did their part, whether it was, you know, here working in the factories helping make the, you know, ammunition and everything for, you know, to ship out for them, or being over there, and I mean people volunteering to go
Yes.
over, you know. I mean that was just, and so and you always hear of like the brotherhoods that were there, you know, during that time. I don't know, it's just to me it's always, that's, you know, those soldiers, and you know that fought in World War II. I mean, the amount of respect that I have. I mean, I have the amount of respect for any soldier who's, or anybody who's willing to fight for our
Sure.
country. You have my full
Yeah.
respect. But you know, but those guys, it's just, It's crazy. And what was interesting was there was just a quick story when I was in Indiana with my uncle. I used to go stay like a week at a time in the summer with him in Indiana, and there was this World War II fighter plane that was going to be at a museum that they were going to be showcasing, and so it was out in this parking lot, and there's this massive plane, right? And so I'm there. I was maybe not 10 years old, 11 years old, maybe
It's a
12.
big plane for 11-year-old kid.
Oh yeah. And there's a bunch of people there, and ranging from people who, are from older people, younger people. I mean, it was really cool to see. And then it started raining. I mean, it started downpouring. And so my uncle and I are standing underneath the wing of this plane out of the rain. And there's this older gentleman and his daughter there that are standing next to us. And my uncle looked at him and he said, can you believe this plane that's here? I mean, it's amazing. And this guy looks at him and he goes, yeah, I know, because this was my plane.
Wow.
And my uncle looked at me and he
Jeez.
goes, what is going on? And
Yeah.
and he looked at him and he goes, I'm sorry, what was that? And he goes, yeah, he said this was my plane. And because of the rain, they weren't going to allow anybody to walk through the plane again, because they didn't want everything to get wet. However, they allowed this gentleman to go in that plane, and he asked my uncle and I. He said, "Do you guys want to come with me and my daughter?" And we're like,
Incredible.
"Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
right.
go." So we walked in. And he started saying, "Yep, and this is where so and so used to sit. This is where so and so used to be. This is where I was at here." And then he sat down in a chair. I mean, the plane was pretty gutted, and they did their best to try and place things that were accurate to the time and to the
Sure.
plane in different spots, just to show where things might have been. And he sat down in one of the seats, and he sat there, and he goes, "Yeah, no, this isn't right. This was so and so spot. I sat over there." I mean, it just like blew our faces off. And he had said, and he walked through, he's like, man, he goes, there's like nothing in here. And he looked at us, he said, trust me, he said, it would not, or it was not this easy to get to the front and the back of the plane. And he goes, we were crawling over each other.
Right. Right. Well, to
Um,
touch base back on where you were talking about too, like during World War II, this country was, as you said, was unified and
yeah,
everyone was together. And it's unfortunate that the devastation was the reason that we were all coming together. I mean, there was a terrible person and he was murdering millions and millions of people. And we took it upon ourselves as a country to say, we're all in this to help
yeah,
you people. And I really wish that, America could find its way to love each other that way again and to care that much about each other again. And it's the unification that could happen,
yeah,
and I wanted to get into the military when I was younger, and I have a kidney disease and I went through 4 different branches and none of them would take me. And I was ready to go. I shaved my head, and I was ready to go. And like, well, you've got this kidney disease, and I don't know if we would take you, and you might not make it past the physical because they're going to do blood tests and all these things. And I was very devastated. You know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
so, and because I always thought that the military, for me, was going to be a way that I could regain brotherhood, as you mentioned again, and like to have my band of brothers and to have a group of people that, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I can rely on these people.
yeah,
And I think that, oddly enough, in a little bit of a symbiotic relationship, this small, very small based Michigan acting group that you and I are involved in, there's not a lot of people.
no,
There's 30, 40, 50 people that we act with, like kind of on a consistent basis. And we all support each other and we all know each other. And it's, yeah, you got that. Even if I didn't get the part and you did, that's awesome. Let's move
yeah,
forward. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's just so fantastic that I hope that Michigan never gets to the cutthroat scenario that I hate to say California ended up with,
yeah,
and I hope that we can persevere, and because people love it here in Michigan. I mean, we have very long winters, and movies are very important to people who don't get to get outside all that often, you know. And so,
Yeah.
um, and people like you, people like Jimmy, and directors like Harley who use the same actors, and we're all getting our legs up, and Lance is using the same actors. We're all getting our legs up, and I think it's great, and I think that Michigan is on a precipice
Yeah.
of moving like mountains in the film industry. And we're not Atlanta. We don't have a big like downtown scene happening, but what we do have is like a solid group of people who all just absolutely support each other like all the time, and there's no nastiness that happens around here. And that's what I like, and I enjoy that a lot about the Michigan acting career.
Well, yeah, and uh, you know, I mean, I haven't worked with Harley yet, but I have worked with Lance, as you know, and that was the first time I got to work with Lance, and just all of it was it was amazing. I mean,
My
I had
first
a
time too with Lance. Yeah, good.
yeah, I mean, I had a wonderful time, and I mean, I was only on set for a couple days, um, but it was one of the best experiences I've ever had, just
For
because,
sure.
you know, I got to work with some of my favorite people to be around, and I got to see some really cool stuff be made, you know what I mean, in front of me. I had a front row seat to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I completely agree. You know, I think everybody's always been very supportive, and I hope they continue to do that. And just as much as, you know, I do my best to support everybody, as, you know, as much as best as I can, because, you know, this is a great place to be, and this is a great place to make movies. I mean, we have every single landscape pretty much that you could think of here in Michigan.
Really, absolutely. We do.
Really every single one.
Mhm.
And so, you know, hopefully with the talks of the tax incentive program coming back, but being revamped so it's more effective and more valuable for Michigan, you know, I hope things can really turn around. But and what's cool to see is, you know, we're starting to see even some of this Michigan crew start to branch outward
Yes.
and bring people with,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
like
That's
that's cool.
exciting.
But yeah, so what are the final question? What are some methods that you use to keep yourself centered and relaxed? What are some things that you try to do, or that you're conscious of, that you try to do to be like, you know what? Nope, I need to just chill out, or I need to stay grounded, stay focused.
Uh, well, I used to do a lot of, I mean, not to sound like a screwball or anything like that, but I used to do a lot of Qigong breathing. I read a book on holding breath in your diaphragm, breathing from your diaphragm as opposed to your lungs,
Mm-hmm.
and the benefits of being able to lower your blood pressure and to take the anxiety away from you. And that can happen very, very rapidly. You know, I mean, if you're in a super tense situation and you don't know what to do, if you take 30 seconds and just hold air inside of you, because air is life for human beings. We need water and food and air, and
Mm-hmm.
a warm place to sleep. Those are the four things that people need in the world. That's
Yeah.
it. And if you don't have all four of those things, you're not going to have a very good quality of life. And so breathing for me, wherever I am, because you can just breathe wherever you are. You can breathe right before you're on set. You can breathe when you're driving down the road. You can breathe after you have a fight with your significant other, or you're frustrated with your children, you know. And then on top of all of those things, you have to, I have probably almost zero judgment inside of me for anything, and I have to accept life as it comes, because I have absolutely no control over anything other than the steps that my feet are walking,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so if I know that if I can breathe and that I can accept Patrick or Jimmy or this guy walking down the road, because that person is their own person, and that just because we made eye contact, that electricity, will you remember that person? And if that person started talking, can you be able to accept them for who they are as a person? Now, some people are just jerks, and some people are just horrible people.
Yeah.
You know, but you have to accept those people as well, because you can't carry them along with you.
Yeah.
You know, and I have a big saying that goes inside of my head that I've had since I was 17 years old. It says, acknowledge and move on.
Mm.
And you can fight yourself until you have the acceptance and the acknowledgement that says, well, you know what? There's literally nothing I can do about this. All right, well, on to the next thing, and you should be able to leave it there.
Yeah.
And not carry it with you. So I suppose breathing and acceptance would be my two big inner beliefs as far as like, getting through the day as a human being, I suppose, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to look at things, man. Seriously. I think if more people looked at things that way, then, I think
I'm still practicing.
Of course. Of course. It's an ongoing thing, but to at least have that mindset is, I think, a very healthy thing to have.
Yeah. You have to know who you are, Patrick. And that's the one thing that I really hold dear to me. Most of all, if any one of my friends, if you ever run across people who really actually know me,
mm-hmm.
they'll say, Todd knows exactly who he is. There's no question in his mind about who he is as a person, and I don't ever try to reinvent myself because Hugh Hefner's standing in the room or because whoever's standing there. I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to walk in. Hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. And can we exchange this energy? And I'm going to know within 30 seconds whether you're just fluffing me or whether you want to be realistic.
Yeah.
And that's been a gift that I've had since I was a little kid. My mom always said, you'd be a great attorney, Todd, because you could smell the bowl like a fart in the car, and I know people like within 30 seconds, you're going to know everything you need to know about somebody because they're just going to dump it all on the table for you, and
yeah. Well, I will tell you what, if you're ever in a room and Hugh Hefner comes walking up next to you, you may need to look at what's going on around you, because
I'll probably be dead.
I was going to say, because
but you understand that you understand what I'm saying. I mean, if Brad Pitt can walk in the room and I might gush a little bit, but I'm going to walk over and like, hey man, what's going on? How you doing? And
I might piss myself a little, but
there's a possibility that I might, that I might go, oh my god. Not really, but I mean, I'll do that in the bathroom.
Do that on the car ride home. Oh my gosh!
You believe it? It's like I'll have my little moment.
Oh man. Well, Todd, it's been a great conversation with you, brother, and I appreciate you coming on.
I'm happy to be here.
And I hope we can do it again, and I hope sometime soon we can all have another glass of whiskey and just kind of talk shop and just hang out.
I enjoy this, Patrick. Thanks so much for having me on. And we will do it again. Absolutely.
Definitely. All right, brother.
See you soon.
All right, and that is a wrap on Todd Gurdon's episode of The Good Life with Patrick Harney. Thanks again for listening. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. And if you didn't, well, then you won't know what I'm saying. But make sure to share, and we'll see you back next week.